If you've ever wondered why so many people are leaving California, maybe you're a California resident and you're thinking about leaving yourself, this video today is going to uncover the top reasons why people leave California and make their move to Georgia. Cross-country moving is at an all-time high. In fact, 8.2 million Americans moved out of their state into a different state in 2022. It should come as no surprise that people are leaving California. In fact, California lost over 17,000 residents in 2022. Now, let's compare that to Georgia. Georgia's the fifth most popular state for net migration. In fact, Georgia gained a net of 74,000 residents in 2022. So, why are people leaving California and making the move to Georgia? Let's start with the first reason, and that is quality of life. I recently had a purchaser move from Laguna Beach, California to the Milton area of Georgia. And in her words, she says, there's living energy all around you. So, and what does she mean by that? So in Georgia, in Metro Atlanta specifically, we have so many trees, we have nature, we have privacy. Atlanta, after all, is called the city in the forest. So everywhere you look, there's greenery. And I know that California has its own beautiful nature-filled areas, but there's also parts of California that are dry and brown and really lacking in that greenery. Also, I wanted to go further into this, and so I started looking for quality of life indexes. There's a website called Numbero that compares quality of life indexes for cities all around the country. So I compared Atlanta to LA and San Francisco. Atlanta's quality of life index is 169.5. LA's quality of life index is 141. And San Francisco's quality of life index is 158, just slightly better than LA. Another thing to note too with quality of life is commute time. That is really important. And I know that Atlanta has traffic. I'm here to tell you, you're not escaping the traffic if you move from California to Atlanta, but I will tell you, you will be spending less time in the car probably. The average commute time in Atlanta is right about 41 minutes. The average commute time in LA is just under an hour. I don't know about you, but if I can shave 20 minutes off of commute time, it's worth it to me. So let's go on to the second reason why so many people are leaving California, and this one will come as no surprise. It's the cost of living in California, and it just keeps getting more and more expensive. California is the fourth most expensive state to live in the US, and it's the second most expensive state to own real estate in behind Hawaii. So let's dig into the cost of living comparison between California and Georgia. So first of all, the Bureau of Economic Analysis did a report where the cost of living in California was reported to be over $53,000 a year. So you've got to make at least $53,000 a year to basically be able to provide for yourself, your family, live in a home, pay for utilities, food, things like that. Now, let's compare that to Georgia, which is $43,000 and some change. Housing in California can cost upwards of 196% more than it does in Georgia, depending on the area that you live in California and the area that you're moving to in Georgia. And as I mentioned before, California is the second most expensive state to own real estate in. So it might interest you to know that the average list price or the average sales price for a home in San Francisco right now is almost $1.1 million. Now, let's compare that to Atlanta. As of last month, the average price for a home in Atlanta is $601,000, which, as you can see, is a tremendous savings and could mean the difference of you living in a one-bedroom condo in LA versus a 4-bedroom single-family home with a yard and garage in Georgia. Big lifestyle difference there too. The third reason why I'm hearing that people are moving from California to my state of Georgia is what's happening with the climate out there. And listen, no matter which side of the debate you fall on, whether you believe climate change is real or you don't believe climate change is real, you cannot deny the facts of what's happening in California right now. Unfortunately, California seems to be on the leading edge of the effects of the climate crisis. And climate change can cause droughts, higher temperature, saltwater contamination, and flooding, in addition to many other things. And with 85% of Californians living or working in coastal towns, rising sea levels are going to present a major challenge and lifestyle change for Californians over the next decade and more. The sea levels have already risen 8 inches in the last century, and they're projected to rise 20 to 55 inches more by the end of this century, which would put 500,000 people at risk of flooding by the year 2100. This also could lead to over $100 billion in property and infrastructure damage. Things like roads, buildings, power plants, tourist destination, things like that are all going to be impacted by the rising sea levels and the continuance of the climate crisis unfolding. Let's talk about saltwater contamination. Saltwater contamination can affect wildlife, and it can also affect drinking water for over 20 million Californians. It's no surprise that forest fires are a big problem in California. Also, let's talk about air quality. We all know, living in the US, that California has one of the worst air quality ratings in the entire country. In fact, I think it's got the worst rating in the entire country. And as it gets hotter, that's going to lead to an increase in the smog that's already a problem in California. Higher levels of smog is going to lead to more people with lung damage and more kids with childhood asthma. So I know that that was a huge downer, but we can't have a video on why people are leaving California and not talk about the climate crisis that unfortunately our neighbors in California are on the front lines dealing with. Now, I know we've been talking about a lot of downer stuff, but let me end it on this. If you're a Californian and you're thinking about moving, and one of the things you're afraid of leaving is all of those sunny days, let me reassure you that if you move to Georgia, at least, you're only going to get about 5 weeks less of sunny days per year. That's right. And I know 5 weeks can sound like a lot when I say that, but it's really not. Californians experience on average about 258 days of sun per year. In Georgia, we have about 217 days of sun per year. So you're only talking a little over 5 weeks that you would miss out on. And I promise it'll be worth it when you take everything else into consideration. The fourth reason why people have told me they're leaving California is a political one, which raises the question, are politics and migration intertwined? And I'm here to tell you that the handful of people that I've moved out of California into Georgia say that it is. Now, California, I think historically has been a pretty liberal leaning state. Actually, that's not quite right. A lot of the state is red, but you've got such big cities that are so populated that vote liberal or vote Democrat. But because, just like Atlanta is a blue city in a sea of red, California has seas of blue that enough voters take over their electoral college votes and puts them in a blue state. And I know that that can be very frustrating if you have opposing views. I'm going to link the video that I did on Georgia politics. If you're wanting to move to an area that tends to vote like you do and has the same values that you do, I promise you're going to find a ton of value in that video. Let's talk about crime, which is the fifth reason why people are leaving California. And there's some very specific reasons why crime has increased over the past 10 years plus in California. So first of all, let's start with the fact that you are more likely to be a victim of crime in California than you are in Georgia. This includes violent crimes, where 3.67 out of 1,000 people will be a victim of violent crime in Georgia, compared to 4.99 in the state of California. Also, you're more likely to be a victim of property crime. There's 23 per 1,000 in the state of California versus only 16 in the state of Georgia per 1,000. The 2022 report that California did on its annual crime averages showed a couple of pretty startling things. Number one, that the state's violent crime rate actually increased by 6.1% year over year, and property crime was up 6.2%. The good news is homicides actually dipped, which is obviously fantastic, but robberies jumped up by 10%. These are pretty startling statistics of the change that's happening in California as it relates to crime. And something else that's now beginning to happen in big cities like San Francisco and LA is that businesses are beginning to leave the state. They're shutting their doors due to the high crimes. Finally, Let's talk about jobs, which is the sixth reason why so many Californians are leaving the state, and frankly, why so many businesses are leaving the state. For starters, 352 companies have moved from California to other states, and they cited two things: the high operating costs in the state of California and strict regulations. So with so many companies leaving the state, it's not a surprise that the employment job growth rate is not increasing. It's actually going down. And in fact, the job growth rate is below the national average. Compare that with the state of Georgia, where the total employment in Georgia is projected to grow over 5.2 million in 2028, which would be an increase of 11.8% decade over decade. Simply put, Georgia is a business and worker-friendly state. Now, in the state of California, it ranks 48th out of 50 for high business tax rates. It's only third behind New York and New Jersey. So the cost of being a business in the state of California versus Georgia is extremely high. There's also state tax that we need to talk about. So in the state of California, the state income tax is about 13%, or actually just over 13%. Compare that to Georgia, which is 5.49%. And that's just state. That's not even federal income tax. Something interesting to note is millennials are the biggest generation of people moving state to state right now. And a lot of them are settling in the South, of course, Georgia being one of those states. And in 2022, Georgia netted 36,000 millennials. So why are so many people moving to Georgia, not just from California, but from other areas? Why are the job prospects so good here? Well, simply put, Georgia is a well-educated state, and we have a ton of businesses here. We've got UPS and Home Depot, Cox Communications, Delta, Coca-Cola, Bell South, AT&T, Arby's. We have some big players in business in the state of Georgia, and when the majority of them are concentrated in the metro Atlanta area, moving to Atlanta can become a no-brainer, especially when the cost of living is less if you're moving from anywhere out west or up north. My hope for this video is that if you are living in California and you are considering a move out of the state for any of these reasons or any other reasons, number one, I want you to know you're not alone. I've worked with many Californians moving into the state for these reasons. And if I've missed anything, throw a comment down below and let me know another reason why people are leaving the state. And if you found this video helpful, please click subscribe, throw a comment down here, and click the notification and like buttons so that you can make sure that you get all of my videos which come out on a weekly basis. And if you're from California, give me a call if you want to talk more details about what it's like to live in the state of Georgia.